Awesome. Welcome everyone here to the Thriving Marriage here with High Thrive Live. I'm Heather Choate, international mindset expert with our incredible international marriage expert, Mark Johnston, and he
Hello.
isn't feeling well. So I would really appreciate you guys giving him some virtual hugs, some thumbs up, some of those hearts.
I'm here anyway.
As
This is important to be here and help everyone in our group. So I'm glad to be here, even if I'm feeling a little under the weather.
Yeah, well, we so appreciate you. And we've had a lot of feedback recently about some, not so healthy behavior going on in a relationship. And how do we have a healthy boundary without pushing our spouse further away? I think that that's one of the biggest things, right, Mark? We have people that come to us and their spouse may be even pulling away, but there's some unhealthy, painful, damaging behaviors going on. So what we want to give you guys today is what we call our bad behavior antidote. Okay. Now, supposedly I can do a poll live, and I really wanted to do it because I like these interactive kind of things, but I don't see where to do it. So maybe I'll try to figure that out when Mark's talking. But if you just want to put in the comments here, if you are experiencing this, or if you have ever experienced this, where your spouse has crossed a line, right? They've done something that has broken trust. Maybe there's harmful, disrespectful behavior going on. Maybe there's an addiction or pornography or an affair, anything like this that's happening in your relationship. Let us know what kind of things you guys are experiencing so that we can help you with those as we go along today. So don't be afraid to leave a comment and let us know that you're there. We like to make these very interactive. So, Mark, first off, is we're going to talk about that there is a simple but rarely discussed reason why unhealthy behavior regularly occurs in marriage. So what is this simple but rarely discussed reason why these things may be happening in a relationship?
Well, I think this actually has a few parts to it in all reality. Part of it is just a difference in expectations. I mean, that could be one reason. That might be, in simple cases, like if you're talking about who's going to take out the trash, or who cooks the dinners or whatnot. But when you have like bigger issues like affairs, you have issues of addiction or things like that, it's just a matter of that situation slowly working towards that problem, and there not being really any brakes put down as it's moving in that direction. Frequently, this is because the couple isn't really all that open, and they don't really discuss struggles. They don't discuss concerns. They don't have any way to really resolve these issues in a healthy manner within the relationship. And so if we had to really reduce it down, it's really, when it's gotten to the point where you've crossed some of these lines and it becomes a major issue, it's because there has been a lack of intimacy, like an emotional intimacy within the relationship.
Okay, that's awesome. So this kind of happens over time, slowly leading kind of this deterioration of connection. Also, you mentioned unclear expectations sometimes that could be leading to some of these things. So you also mentioned in this training, which I'm going to let everyone know about later, but this really caught my attention, that there is a certain attitude that leads to negative cycles and patterns. And once you identify and change this attitude, then you can have safety and respect in the relationship. So Mark, what is this attitude that is leading to some of these negative cycles and these negative patterns? How do we identify it?
Well, it's really kind of an inability to say no. I think a lot of times in a marriage, we get into the mindset, okay, we want to not really rock the boat. We want to make sure that the other person it feels good. And so I think a lot of people have a bit of a hard time standing up for what really should be happening and saying no. On the other side of that, once again, going back to some of these mismatched expectations, the person who is having trouble crossing those boundaries, they're the actual one, the offender in this case, it's sometimes really hard to be faced with the fact that you might be doing damage to the person that you love, or that, to be met with a restriction on your freedom, which is often the case in how it's viewed. So you might, in the case of an affair, a common idea of the person who is committing the affair, committing adultery, they're saying to themselves, well, shouldn't I be able to be with the one that I love? Shouldn't I be able to be happy? It's this idea that I should be able to be free. And yes, I think people should be able to be free, but in the right context. We could take that very same statement there and say, well, if you really wanted to be happy, and these sort of marriage problems are full of, okay, you should do this, you should do that. But, this person could have taken that same effort and applied it to making their marriage very happy. And because they're pulling a whole family along with them, it is much more than just a simple matter of a question of, shouldn't I be happy? But yes, the attitude here is, the problem is this idea that boundaries are a restriction of freedom. It's hard to say no on either end in many cases.
Gotcha. And you alluded to something there, that sometimes a spouse that is engaging in harmful or hurtful behavior, sometimes they don't even know that it's actually hurting someone.
Yes.
Which, I can understand those on the receiving end. They're like, how could you not know that that's hurting me? Right. Mm-hmm. But how is it? How could they not know that what they're doing could actually be hurting others?
So here's the thing, Heather, and everyone else that's listening, this happens all the time. I would probably say, the vast majority of the people that I work with, it's more uncommon to not see something like this. And the reason is like I said before, it's people get into a habit of not being close emotionally. So, a spouse who is being offended might think, okay, it's obvious, and it's obvious why I'm upset here. But the thing is, even if you've been with your partner 10 years, 20 years, 30 years or more, they don't read your mind. Couples, they don't have the ability to read each other's minds. As much as you would like to say that, or as much as you think it, as much as you would love it if they do, you really need to spell things out very clearly and be close emotionally if you want to prevent these boundary issues in down the line.
Gotcha. Absolutely. All right. Again, for those who are just joining us, I recognize that now have a few more viewers. If you have any questions or, want us to work with you specifically on this, if your spouse has crossed a line in any of these areas, maybe they aren't talking to you respectfully. We got this question in. My spouse is blaming me for the problems in our marriage. Their language and treatment toward me is hurtful and disrespectful. So Mark's saying right here that that this attitude has been going on for a while. There's probably been that lack of emotional connection and intimacy. And the first thing is, how would you communicate to your spouse if they're doing that? Like their language and treatment is hurtful and disrespectful. How would you communicate to them and let them know that it is?
Well, I would say that in setting healthy boundaries, one of the big important things to remember is that if you are going to do this, you have to be the one that is very calm and even and very objective. If you're coming to this emotional and you're trying to punish the other person or show them how it feels, it will end up a big hot mess. And so in something like that, where someone is being disrespectful, we go back to what I was saying. It probably wasn't always like that. It probably gradually became that way, and someone along the line didn't say no. Either the person being disrespectful, they didn't say no themselves, they didn't set those boundaries for themselves. The person being offended didn't make it clear that what was going on was not okay. And you could even say, okay, well, they did tell them. The thing is, if someone is saying, here's the boundary, and it's still being crossed and you're not doing anything about it, then that's not an effective boundary. You're not going far enough. And I don't mean to sound like I'm blaming the victim in this case, but Heather and I are very much believers that you are in control of yourself and you're in control of your own problems, and there's always something that you can do. A big issue with a lot of relationships is the view that, okay, my problems lie outside of myself. It lies with my spouse, it lies with other people. And the moment that you can take control of your own issues, it's the moment that you're going to really start heading down a healthy path.
Right. I love what you said, and I want to touch on this and illustrate it with someone I was just talking to yesterday about that you need to come into this if you're going to be communicating this with your spouse, that they are hurting you, that this behavior is damaging or disrespectful, that you come at it with a place of calmness. Okay. I actually had the privilege of talking to two gentlemen yesterday, very kind of similar issues. They were both completely emotionally torn up about the behaviors of their wives, and the behaviors themselves, they were not healthy. Bottom line, like it was not okay. The situation is not okay. But the frame of mind that these gentlemen were both in was of complete overwhelm, anxiety, fear, even being stretched too thin, terrified, just devastated by all of these things. And that if you approach your spouse in that kind of state, what's going to happen, right? Our natural tendency is just to react when we're feeling those kind of heightened emotions. But how is your spouse going to receive that? Is that going to lead to creating a healthy boundary and effectively communicating, this is actually really hurting me, this behavior that you're doing, right? So what Mark's saying right there is crucial. And that's one of the first steps, is get to a centered place within yourself so that you can have the ability to effectively communicate, right? And you're not going to come at that place from a state of fear, panic, overwhelm, stress, anguish, right? You're going to have to do some emotional processing to get there. And that's not something that we're taught. We're not taught that from our parents usually, unless your parents are like amazing, which I have never known anyone's parents to teach them this. We're definitely not taught it in school. Our culture doesn't teach this. No one teaches you, how do you process a negative emotion? How do you take that and actually use it to your advantage? How can you learn from that, right? And so that's crucial that you develop some of those skills. So then you go to your spouse, right? You're in your calm state. Mark, we've set the stage.
Yep.
Okay. Let's imagine I'm the one and I'm telling my spouse, look, the way that you're talking to me is disrespectful. I'm in a now calm centered state. How do I engage that conversation?
Well, like I was saying earlier, one of the big problems is that the expectations often are not clear. And so I think one of the first steps is about being very clear and very concrete with what's expected. If there is disrespect, you have to address that and say, hey, look, the situation, it's getting out of hand. And I feel there's been a lot of disrespect going on here. And I can't go any further in that direction. This is what I mean by that. I'm frequently, I feel like you're attacking me, and there's a lot of name calling, and, a lot of the issues are about a person personally instead of discussion about the problem. So I'd like to do this instead.
Okay. So rather than saying, specific, you are hurting me, you are disrespectful, say, when you're doing this, I feel disrespected.
Yeah. So this goes into, there's so many of these things that are interconnected, but this goes into what really escalates an argument. And what that is it happens as soon as you cross a certain line. It's when the discussion about a problem becomes a discussion about a person. When that discussion becomes personal, that's when things are going to escalate. Someone's going to blow up, or the walls are going to go up, or someone's going to shut down, someone's going to get defensive. And that's why you need to be in a very calm, centered space so that you don't take things to a personal level. You are simply talking about the problem in an objective manner.
Beautiful. All right, we have some really great questions coming in. We're going to get to those in just a minute. We'll pull out a couple of them. So now, when someone's crossed a line, we hear things like, okay, they need to change. But people don't like to change, right? Change is hard. And so what can we do? How can we have a boundary not be so threatening, like you need to change, so that they'll want to naturally receive it and go along with the boundary?
Well, ideally, what you would have with these boundaries is hopefully you have an understanding from what is wanted by the unhealthy behavior. Sometimes if, you have a fairly emotionally stunted partner, that might be harder to get out. But just even having a basic understanding or a basic guess is really good. So if this individual is yelling at you and wanting to be with you, you understand, okay, they're getting something out of that connection. Just knowing that is important because you want to be able to offer a healthy alternative to the unhealthy behavior. So for instance, if you and I were in an argument and there's a lot of disrespect going on, and I let you know, hey, this is going on, I'm not going to deal with this. This is just unhealthy. You can even say, look, I would love to talk with you once you've calmed down. And I would love to resolve this issue and problem solve it, as long as we can work on it together. But, these personal attacks just aren't really healthy. And so I'm going to take a step back.
Right. And that right there, Mark's alluding to what he has created here, which is our anatomy of a healthy boundary. I don't know if you can see that, but we've put together this, I think is beautiful because I made it. So you all better think it's beautiful. But it's using these principles and putting together the anatomy of what a healthy boundary looks like. Okay. Piece by piece, because there's 4 crucial elements that you must have in order for a boundary to work effectively. Okay. So everyone who is watching, we will follow up with you in Facebook Messenger, and I will give you the link to this. It is our free gift to you for joining us today on this training. And I encourage you to really study these things and apply them. And if you have questions, which oftentimes you'll still have some questions, feel free to reach out to Mark and I about how to apply them. Sometimes, I'm going to go to this question here in just a minute, but you don't even know like what kind of boundary to set because you're so caught up in the situation. For example, we have had several people with affairs that have come to us asking for help, and they aren't sure if they should still be physically intimate, sexually intimate with their spouse who is also being sexually, physically intimate with their affair person, right? And so they don't know. They don't know, like, should that be a boundary? They don't know, like when they take their kids and they say, you can't see my kids and I'm taking the kids, but they don't know where the boundary can even be. Like there's so much emotion caught up in that. And I totally understand that it's very challenging to see clearly in those things. Even having that guidance on knowing what the boundary can be so empowering and so freeing to realize, okay, yes, I do have a right to say this. Yes, if I make this boundary, it will get me where I want to be.
So can I add something to that, Heather? So, with all of that, where should you set these boundaries? I think a good question to ask in this situation is, does this situation feel healthy to me? If not, then that's where a boundary should be set up. This is going to be so different from person to person. And, I think there are some general guidelines on what should and should not be happening in a relationship. Obviously, disrespect is something that shouldn't be happening in a relationship, but to what level is that acceptable? And to what level are you just, can you kind of understand what's going on and it's not a big deal? So for instance, if, even me, I'm not always perfect. There are times when, like today, I'm not feeling well, or I might be tired, and there might be situations where, I might be a little bit grumpy. If my behavior feels unhealthy, then I would expect my wife to speak up to me and say something. That's just the kind of understanding that we have. But every situation is going to be a little bit different. And the question there, like, should I still be sleeping with my partner if they're having an affair? It's really about, does that feel healthy to you? For me personally, I don't think that would feel healthy. And for many people, I would recommend that would be a boundary right there. But yeah, that question would be key in that sort of situation.
Awesome. So let's just go to one other specific situation here as one of the questions. If they ask for space to work on themselves, but they talk and flirt with you and then pull away when you respond, how do you give a boundary for a situation like that other than not reply? That's a complicated situation. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of playing back and forth there.
No, but here's the thing. Does that feel healthy? Well, the whole reason why this person is asking, from the question, I'm not sure if it's a man or a woman, but from the situation, it just seems like it doesn't feel healthy. But I'm also going to point out here that the expectation, I'm guessing, has not been set. As in, there hasn't been any sort of defined, okay, this is when we're going to talk and this is what's going on. I don't think that this is healthy. There hasn't been a healthy alternative discussed here. And there hasn't been, the last part, one of the other, well, not the last part, but one of the other parts of a healthy boundary, there hasn't been a consequence when the boundary is crossed.
That is awesome, because that is what we're going to get to. So Mark and I have put together a training to go even deeper into this. So once you know what the boundary is, you have to apply the 4 different core aspects of a healthy boundary, which we have. Again, I'm going to show you our little guide that you're all going to get. It's totally free. But I made it as a bridge. I just want to point this out real quick. I made it as a bridge because often we think of a boundary as a line or a wall or a division, whereas Mark and I, the way that I see it especially is it's a bridge that's actually going to bring you together. And it's setting those expectations so it's clear, and it's building it out so that you can cross it together, not so that it creates further division between you, but it is keeping you safe, right? It's like you're here and your spouse is there and there's water beneath you. You need to have that bridge and a clear understanding, as well as effective consequences for when they do cross that boundary. Because you know what, if you've been in a situation of unhealthy communication for a while, right? Disrespectful behavior, stonewalling, shutting you out, going outside the marriage, getting different needs met, anything like that, affairs, addictive behavior, those habits are going to take time to break, right? They're going to take time to change and evolve. So they're going to cross the boundary. You can just expect that, right, Mark?
Yes.
So it's
Absolutely.
super crucial that you know how to have an effective consequence. So in this training that we have, and I'll show you how you can get it, it's super easy. We're going to go over how to create effective consequences. And it's not to punish them or to make them feel bad, but it is to move you forward to effective behavior to keep you safe. And it's also to show yourself from a mindset perspective that I honor myself, I respect myself. And we've decided this is crucial. I've decided this is what is needed to get us to a healthy place and for me to feel safe. And I'm going to honor and respect myself for that. So any other final thoughts, Mark, real quick?
Well, I'm just thinking that we probably should have used the other platform so we could screen share. So you didn't have to use the phone. But other than that, no. Let's see. Yeah, as far as boundaries, like I can't emphasize enough just how important it is in these situations. I know I already mentioned this, but I want to emphasize how important that it is that you be calm, that you be objective, that you are not the emotional one in these sort of situations. As soon as you really get upset, angry, sad, things are going to fall apart from there, and it's going to be so much harder for you to set these boundaries. It's going to be harder for you to enforce them in a healthy manner. I can just see all sorts of things going wrong if you are approaching something like this and you are really upset. How hard it would be for you to draw that line without it becoming attacking, or draw that line without it really, there being some offense on your side as well. And so mindset, fostering a healthy mindset, and just about everything that Heather and I suggest is probably one of the most important things that you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, if you want to get this, make sure you leave a comment here on the video so we know you watched it. That's the only way I'm actually going to know that you watched it. Say hi, or say, anatomy of a healthy boundary. That's kind of long. Just so say boundary. that'll be the tag phrase. And I see a lot of you have already left comments there. So we'll definitely get that over to you. Now, to get the full training, which like Mark said, is going to help you know how to set a boundary, what a healthy boundary looks like, how to communicate that calmly, effectively, and with understanding so your spouse will receive it without blame, judgment. You know, it won't make their walls go up. The whole idea is to create that bridge that's going to connect you guys together so that you can work on this and you can really move forward. As well as in every single training that we ever do, anything that we ever come out with to help you guys with this, we always include a power exercise, something applicable that you can take and you go and you do it. And you apply it by going through the exercise and taking action steps on it. We aren't just about talking about principles and it sounds really nice. No, we actually want you to go out and do these things and put them to the test, and you'll see the difference that it makes for you. And you'll see the level of empowerment that you have within you, especially if you've been dealing with some really negative, hurtful, harmful, unhealthy behavior for a long time. I can promise you that something inside of you has been affected by that. And so it's time to take some of your personal power back and some personal respect for yourself back. And there will be an internal journey and a shift that happens within you as you do those things. And that's going to make everything better for you in your own personal life. So how do you get this? Super easy. So we are offering it as a free gift to every person who joins our Relationship Reboot course within the next 3 days. Okay. And if you're watching the replay, sorry, it's only going to be the next 3 days. That's just what it is. So for the next 3 days, if you join our Relationship Reboot course, you can get this training, which is valued at, you normally pay like $97 for this one training alone. So it's our free gift to you for joining Relationship Reboot, which guides you exactly on how to reconnect with your spouse. Now, I know a lot of you are members of our Reboot group and we love you. And so we have a way for you to get it too. So I will post that over in the members group because we don't want anyone else to miss out on this. It's too important. Boundaries are crucial to marriage, right? We have boundaries with our children. We have boundaries with ourselves. We have boundaries with our employment. We have boundaries on our highways, right? Boundaries are part of life. And if you don't have the right boundaries in your marriage, then it's time that you start to do that so that you can get to a healthy place. So with great love and respect and gratitude for you, Mark, and everyone for joining us, thank you for coming. And we look forward to getting this gift out to you of our free guide and look forward to seeing you over in our Relationship Reboot course and for the great things that are going to happen. So thank you, Mark. We appreciate you and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Heather. See you.
Have a good day.